And we're doing episode 48, Three Bros Podcast, where we all read things and we get upset. We talk
Very
about
upset.
it.
So, you always get upset.
Oh, I get upset. Some of this shit really makes me freaking hot. This is one of them, I swear. And this isn't something that I sent you guys too early in the week. This is kind of a last minute throw in there, but we're gonna do it anyways. We're gonna start with something I saw today. So Trump tweets. I haven't even seen the tweet. I don't even need to. I could care less. Trump tweets about backing a Harley Davidson boycott.
Mm-hmm.
And Harley Davidson announced that they're moving production of some of their motorcycles to Europe because the tariffs have hurt them negatively on sales in Europe, motorcycle sales in Europe. Because if they import stuff that now costs a lot more just to export the bikes to sell them there, that don't make no sense, right? So they make this big announcement. They're like, "Hey, we're moving some of our production to Europe." So Trump, of course, gets pissed off because it's not America first. And there are so many obvious things. There are so many things, and there's so many reasons to tear apart, like what Trump said, like why this happened, like how Trump is not. If this is the art of the deal, then it is not a very good deal. But the thing that just makes me so hot is, like, he's the one that, like, tariffs are taxes, right? He's the one that places these tariffs, and Harley, who seemingly, obviously knows that it's, politically better for them to be aligned with the president, not to be against the president, right? So I'm sure they're not trying to be against the president, is just moving production of motorcycles that are sold in Europe to facilities that are in Europe. So, like, when we think about production of the motorcycles and where it's happening, right? If these are motorcycles that are being sold in Europe, like, shouldn't Europeans also demand that, like, their bikes be built there too? Like, this is so, to me, so much semantics and so much stupid. I can't even, like, it's also the fact that Trump just tweets about it and just, like, yells it out to the world as if it's not so hypocritical. It's like he thinks we're all stupid. I don't understand. Like, there is no way that you can't know that it's production of motorcycles sold in Europe. They're going to build motorcycles sold in Europe. Like, what's the deal? I don't know. This just pisses me off.
Well, Trump wants Europe to buy American Harleys and doesn't want America to buy European steel. So
here's my question at this point: is do you think it's a cultural thing for America? Do you think you go to France and they're like, buy French products? Do you think you go to China and they say, buy China products? Like, do you think it's very exclusively American that we have attitudes like that?
No,
I don't think so.
I promise you, in Western countries, they definitely, I've seen, especially in Canada. Canada's a big one of encouraging people to buy its products. Like, the government aggressively labels things based off of what, I guess it's the government's way of thinking what isn't better for the society itself, which is a slippery slope. But I guess the government up there does, and I have to source this, but they put, like, if it's made in Canada, if, like, 90% of the production is in Canada, then they, like, put, like, officially Canadian on there, like, on every product. I got to look it up, but it's interesting. So,
what do you think people not like about not buying local or not buying? You know what I mean? Like,
what do you mean? What do you think people?
What they don't like about it?
Yeah. What is it that they're aggressively pursuing?
People are pursuing the cheapest thing. So.
Oh, of course.
Right, but
that's the only
they're not by saying buy local. They're not by saying we need American cars. You need American this, American that, or whatever relative country you're in. You're not actually always buying cheaper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because they want to feel like they're keeping jobs in their country? Is it because they want to feel like there's economic development in their country? Like, what do you think it is?
Why you're asking me why I think people like to say shop local and like to think that helps, like why I think that helps the society, right?
Yep.
So it's all about disconnect. Like the massive corporate entities, the world that we live in today, there's so much disconnect and there's so much just like wringing of every dollar, that it doesn't 100% get like reinvested into the community, right? It's easier for a corporation to come in and just like Walmart did in small town America, we all know, came in and just like aggressively outpriced everybody else, and started basically, no, they were not robbing the town, but they were definitely exporting a lot more money in the town than money that was staying than money that otherwise would have stayed in the town, right?
Right.
And they were doing it by pricing things where, like, you know, I read that Walmart would even take a loss just to like choke out the competition. They would do it by, you know, they were such a big entity that they could do stuff like that. And it kind of just like, you know, this is exactly why a totally free market just can't, I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it just definitely doesn't work in the best interests of the collective. Because like, if you're squeezing, just like that like article I sent you guys, I can't remember what it was, or the article Chad sent us, the BBC article, where it was like we might go back to using this thing that you know boosts crop exports and boosts GDP, crop GDP and stuff like that, but it's like really harmful to bees and it might kill like a bunch of them. And I was just like, I feel like this is a bad long-term investment, right? Like so like squeezing every penny, every like small minutia percent of value out of everything just sometimes doesn't help at all. And I think specifically to what you asked, like it just kind of like dollars kind of get exported out of the town.
Do you think that's why cities aggressively compete for headquarters of large corporations?
Well, those are high quality jobs.
Well, not just that, but if you have the headquarters of a company, that means you have all the CFO, the CEO, the CTO, the COO, you know, all the bigwigs, all the VPs, the executives, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
And chances are that's probably where they hold board meetings and, right, wealthy people come in for board meetings and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
You're more likely, and all that money comes into the headquarters, if you will, right? Granted, a lot of it gets parsed out to investors, but at the same time, a lot of that, right? Let me think about this a little more, but Rochester with Kodak, all that money would come here to Kodak. Now, again, granted, 30% of that would go to investors, right? But then, like, the bulk of that kind of stayed in Rochester, which made Rochester a good place to live because people were spending money.
Yeah, I mean, when money stays local, it's just better for the local population. That's
right.
So based on that, is that
right?
Like,
and as we move forward into a more globalized economy, no matter whether anybody likes it or not, we're moving towards that. It's a lot easier. We're so connected. We're so easily connected. It's a lot easier for value to flow in and out of an area. So it's not like.
So should we rename Rochester Wegmans? Or should we rename Rochester?
Oh my God, that would be the ultimate that would be the ultimate corporatism.
Well, like if you think about it, and you look at like the largest employer of a given area.
Yeah,
that's kind of where your economic development is.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have a giant company that's bringing in money, that's bringing in, good paying jobs, that's bringing in people who are.
But we have too much of a slavish devotion to the word jobs and like what jobs are and like the benefit they provide and how like just getting jobs to an area isn't necessarily the whole picture. Because and I always come back to this. I feel like a lot too. It's just like, dude, wage growth isn't what it should be compared to, how much value the very rich are gaining over the past 20, 30 years, ever since Reagan. Not all his fault, but ever since then, it's just like, I just the corporatism of America is fine. It's just if we're gonna go down this route, we can do things. We need to do things like a lot differently and a lot more efficiently and better. Because it's just it's just sucking so much value out of such a large part of. Too much value is just being concentrated. So it's just we got to figure out how to do something else, dude. I think like 25 out of 50 states, the largest employer is Walmart, and we all can admit that Walmart does not
predominantly in the South. Interesting.
Absolutely, and like I'm pretty sure it's factual. We all can admit that like most of those employees probably. Maybe are above the poverty line, but I'm not sure. Like,
I would argue probably not.
So according to Business Insider,
I mean, you're going to be hourly.
Yeah.
This was last year.
Hmm.
Never mind. An ad blocker just kicked off. It's asking me to turn off.
A lot of states have like universities as their leading employer.
All right, let's see. Walmart.
Like New York State is the SUNY system.
It is the SUNY system.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
Spend
a shitload on education. I mean, I kind of just wanted to. I mean, this is just. I just wanted to talk more about how this is really unprecedented for. I mean, why is he getting so involved with these boycotts?
Sure, yeah.
Like weird.
I don't know, dude. And also to drive it back to the article, like this is so hypocritical that it's almost just like so brazen. It's like it just feels like he just thinks like nobody like it just like he doesn't even know he's being hypocritical. Like I think how brazen it is.
I think it's very incredible considering all of the Trump merch that you can buy is almost always made in China. Like, how are you going to shit on a private company acting its best?
Yeah, he's a hypocrite.
Especially because of.
So there's. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say there's kind of two different lanes of conversation that we can go down with this article, and we already kind of have a little bit. Though on the one we can call Trump incompetent, he is. And this, this shows you, at least in this area, he's incompetent. This is just ridiculous. But then on the other hand, you can also talk about how why we can have a serious conversation about why Harley is moving their jobs over there, and why we lose out on a lot of trade wars, and how we can do better if we have to move into if we are forced, in my opinion, which we are, to move into a futuristic economy, no matter what, which we're going to be, then we're going to have to just work with it and not fight against it. And if corporatism is what it's going to be, then we've got to structure. We just got to figure out how we can, and I dare I say, redistribute the economic value and economic output from corporatism more evenly throughout society. So there's two different conversations you can have there. The Trump one's easy because he's incompetent.
Yeah, I don't agree with what you're saying, though. I think the answer to corporatism is less corporatism, not necessarily taking concentrated wealth and redistributing. It's just break up corporations, bring smaller business.
You can do that. You should do that.
I think that also does a great job in just spreading wealth around.
But here's the thing, and Caleb's brought this up in previous pods too. Sure, you can do that and increase competition. And increasing competition is always going to be helpful. You're right. The problem is, in this modern age, you need such large companies just to achieve the things that we've achieved. If you break up the value of a lot of companies to the point where they can't make the necessary investments to necessarily move us forward into the future in a modern society as quickly as possible, then that's not efficient.
Yeah, so, but I think we can do a much better job with the investment. What kind of investments is Walmart making in the general shopping infrastructure? There's nothing really that needs to be
So yeah, what do you mean? I don't.
You're arguing that bigger corporations have more resources to invest more into research, essentially, is what you're saying, correct?
Just concentrated power is going to reach the next levels of.
Well, hold on.
Where society is going quicker.
When I was saying that before, I was specifically talking about resources, because you can pool your resources and have that much more in order to achieve more. But I think what Chad's saying is, okay, let's look at Walmart, who is the largest employer in 22 of our 50 states.
Sure.
What improvements to society or technology or medicine or anything that we deem be helpful, what improvements are they making in those fields? And to Chad's point, I don't know that they are.
Walmart is.
I don't know that they aren't, but I don't know that they are.
Walmart is putting food on the table that some families might not otherwise have been able to because of their prices over the years. I don't think
that's necessarily
true.
If you look at the prices,
Walmart brings their efficiency on like their business model. We just talked about it. The way they do it is just like price people out because they can do that. So they can make the working family's dollar, which isn't that they don't have that many of those. They can make them stretch further because their prices are cheaper. Okay,
as opposed to a pre-Walmart type of.
Sure, exactly, right.
Supermarket experience.
What if in the late 80s, all of a sudden every week you saved 50% on your shopping bill? I don't know. I'm just throwing shit out there, but because
Walmart, but there's also way less jobs in general in society.
Dude, and also just like the services that Walmart provides, just like cheap clothes and cheap toiletries and I don't know, dude, just like things that we take for granted in a first world country. Like Walmart provides a lot of basic necessities like food and hygiene and at a really cheap price.
These things were being supplied before.
So
what I'm saying is,
here's the thing, Chad. Why can't we just
hold on? Yes, these things are cheaper, but at what cost to the American? Because
I agree.
You're saying, well, working class people today are struggling, so Walmart provides a service because they're cheaper goods. But Walmart might, in part, be responsible for the plight of that working class individual.
Walmart, you're right. You're absolutely right. It could be a catch-22 there. And so we need to figure out what we're going to do. And so I think this is what I'll say. It's fair. Is it fair for me to say, Chad, that you're not like Walmart is here to stay, right? Do you think that like Walmart
is not going anywhere?
Right, exactly. So like their business model is still good enough that like they're not going anywhere. Is it fair to say that like maybe we need to figure out how to work with the fact that they exist as opposed to just like breaking up Walmart? Like I just don't.
I think there are better sizes of companies.
Sure, and maybe
like a Wegmans does a pretty good job, but I don't doubt for a second that if a Wegmans becomes like a Walmart, then Wegmans will become like a Walmart.
And maybe Walmart's a bad example, and this is what I was going to follow up with. How about this? How about
shout out to Wegmans?
What if from 1980 on, the federal government, and I know this can't be in a vacuum, but think about this in a vacuum. Don't think about this as taxes on top of already more taxes.
Just sure, hypothetical.
Hypothetical. Imagine the federal government says, okay, Walmart's gonna pay their workers like crap. In many instances below the poverty line. This is basically borderline human rights violation. Like you pay your workers such little, like peanuts, and obviously the profits are huge. Like go look up the Walton's family's fortune, like humongous, unnecessarily wealthy. So the government says, guess what? We're going to tax. You're still going to keep, 70% of maybe their wealth today, like tremendous amounts of wealth, but we're going to tax a bunch of this. And we're going to redistribute this back to your workers, and we're going to add to their paycheck whatever amount that it requires to pull that person or that person's family to or above the poverty line. Like, fuck you. If you're going to pay them shit, then we're going to tax your profits. You're still going to get most of them, but we're going to tax them the amount that it takes to take your workers up to and above the poverty line. Because this is bullshit.
Right, but should I trust a governing force to level that playing field, or
who are you going to trust?
Or a properly managed free market? That's the question then.
Okay.
That's the question.
Okay.
I'm not saying I'm for or against one.
No problem.
I'm not saying one is better objectively.
Then you tell me how
the question.
Give me a scenario. I'm giving you a straight answer to a problem that maybe a lot of people wouldn't agree with, but at least it is a actual viable solution that could get a plan. So as far as the free market thing goes, Chad, you tell me a solid plan that you would implement as far as free market policies that would get you to getting these people paid more.
Well, if we properly broke up monopolies and limited companies naturally to smaller sizes, then.
But what about just raising
quite naturally workers would have more.
Go ahead.
Would have more say in those organizations.
What about just raising the minimum wage? Right?
Yeah, but
that fixes your problem, right, Cyril?
No, because then no, it doesn't. And I'm glad you brought that up because it was probably a gotcha you were trying to do here. But no, of course not, because the owners are going to pass. The owners are going to pass that. Pass. Oh gosh, you know what I'm trying to say about.
Pass that burden to the consumer.
Correct. Sorry.
Right,
pass
so
that
hold
cost
on, real
forward.
quick,
Yes.
Cyril.
So we need
hold
that.
on. No, stop.
Go ahead.
When you tax somebody, what do you think happens?
You take their money to add to your revenue
pass that on to the consumer
as a government.
As well, I'll pass everything I can onto the consumer as a business.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So
but we're passing. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I see what you're saying.
You're not wrong, but you're passing that bill onto people who have more than enough. And tell me I'm wrong.
How?
I'm not going to sit here and cry for the Waltons. They have billions and billions of dollars.
Nope. Hard miss. Hard miss on your part.
I think Caleb's saying that if they take a tax cut, then they would. If they're losing money out of their pocket due to taxes, then they're going to try and squeeze more money out of their company, aka their consumer.
Correct.
That's what he's saying.
Fine.
I will make up
as a
business. I will make up that difference. No matter what you do, I'm going to make up that difference.
But fine, but I think that this way mitigates that a lot more. It's obviously a much better idea than just raising minimum wage. I think it is because you're at least trying to avoid that outcome.
I disagree because now you have government directly meddling in personal fortunes. Fuck off. Fuck off.
Okay. So then, what do you do for these workers who make shit and who are below the poverty line? What are you going to do
our next article?
What are you going to do to make it so that these people that have gobs of money that could otherwise maybe have done without a bunch of it and been totally fine and made people who live in poverty's lives better just because they made a few bucks more? What are you going to do to fix that? Because it's a problem.
No, it is a problem, but there's so many different things on the table here as well. I mean,
sure.
It's hard to say, but quite frankly, the easiest thing would be to raise the minimum wage. Right? That's an appropriate regulation in response to people not making enough money, right?
Break up the corporations.
I don't agree. I think we can think outside the box on it. Minimum wage is going to pass the cost on the consumer.
In my very humble opinion, meddling in people's the government determining that you make too much money is the most asinine thing I've ever fucking heard. Because this is also the same government, mind you, which in one of your articles you sent, somebody's being indicted for what? What are they? Collinsworth. What's he being indicted for? I'm looking it up again.
Insider trading.
Insider trading.
Yeah.
You want that guy to make that determination? Come on. You're not thinking outside of the box. You're playing right into the box.
Got him.
What?
You're in a box, dude.
Okay. So you think outside the box by just saying raise the minimum wage?
No, I'm saying let's use the current legal standings in order to try to do what we can to raise minimum wage. So you want to go in and determine if you make more than this much money, I'm going to take it from you and I'm going to give it to your employees.
Because these employees are below the poverty line. When did I ever say give them gobs and gobs of money? Go ahead.
Well, first of all, you haven't even set up a plan on how to determine that.
Okay. What if some government researches this already? We can pull up statistics city by city from poverty line.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is how do you make it fair between two employees? Let's say one guy's worked at Walmart for 5 years, the other guy for 1 year. You're going to give him the same exact amount of money? Well, that's not fair.
Yes, it is. I'm going to make sure that his family is cared for.
It's not.
No, stop.
No, it's not fair.
Think about it as far as human beings. These are families' lives.
As soon as you turn around and tell people you're going to give them money, it has nothing to do with anything other than being fair. And what one person determines is fair is not what the other one will. And I'm merely asking, are you going to take into account different things like amount of time I've worked there.
Of course. Wait, no.
Why not?
Why would that matter? You
shouldn't if I've spent more time at this company, shouldn't I get more than that guy?
Every hour that you spend being productive, I think that you should be paid the equivalent of not being under the poverty line. I don't know why that's such a radical idea. I really don't understand that. If
it's not. That's not the radical idea.
If we want to motivate people to get back in the job market, we can't promise them 10, because in some places the minimum wage is still the federal $7.25. You're going to tell me people are going to be really motivated from disadvantaged communities where you can make a ton of money off crime. You're going to tell me these guys are going to be motivated to do the right thing and go work at that $7 Arby's job. And that's going to, no, that's not going to, if you want to be serious about motivating people to be going to work, then pay them fair wages and figure out how to do that. Because unless they're getting fair wages, they're going to have wayward eyes, especially from these disadvantaged communities, when you can run criminal enterprises and make that way more lucrative.
Okay. So let me ask you a question then.
Sure.
Pick a criminal enterprise. Pick a person who's been successful in criminal enterprise.
Okay.
What?
Give me a name. A person who is successful in criminal enterprise.
Oh, Chris.
What do you? Any gang leader? Anyone who rises through the ranks?
Okay. How much money do you think that gang leader made? Wealth. Total value of wealth.
I don't know.
I don't understand.
I don't understand.
To imply
the
here.
Opportunity.
The implication. Are you gonna keep interrupting me, or let me finish my thought?
Well, I think I know the point you're trying to make.
The point I'm trying to make is that if you do rise through the ranks, just like you do anywhere else, you're gonna make a shitload of money. What's my incentive for not going into the drug game and making it big and being like fucking Pablo Escobar? What's my incentive to not do that?
Well, because there's opportunities around you.
There's always opportunities.
Wow.
No, there's not.
When you get into the drug game, do you know how much money? Do you know how much money people make when they first get into the drug game?
Yeah, but you don't understand the kind of poverty that exists in this country. Then
come on, yeah, I feel like you don't.
No, I do.
My point
is that you're better off educating people than you are fucking raising the minimum, because the minimum wage in New York City is it's never going to match the minimum wage in Little Rock, Arkansas. Economically,
it shouldn't.
Speaking, right?
And it shouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, why would it?
The poverty line is adjusted for each city. Like, the government studies this kind of stuff. Like,
I get that, but the federal minimum wage doesn't do that, right? It's federal. It's the whole country.
Right, but then
I'm arguing against my point right now, just to let you guys know what I'm doing. I'm arguing against my point for just raising minimum wage to achieve what Cyril wants to achieve.
But I already admitted to you that raising the minimum wage without regulating where the companies pass the dollar onto, it's just going to end up being passed on to consumers.
But is it fair to regulate, to tell the company that you can't do this?
You could do that. That's fine. Then that's fine. If you want to raise the minimum wage and then also adding to that bill, say, hey, we're also adding a regulation that tells these companies that they're not allowed to pass this buck on to the fine. But you're gonna have to figure out how to enforce that. And like, is that better than what I said? Maybe. I think all of it's terrible. What? But I know. All right. Well,
interesting. So what's your answer?
We can use common sense when
I'm admitting that I don't have an answer.
Being the steadfast contrarian you are, it would imply that you have some sort of better answer.
No, I just think that you're going down a road that ultimately ends up in nationalizing industries.
But it does.
Oh my gosh, it does.
It's just smarter regulation.
Why do we have to do that?
I mean, we already live in a country where we regulate industries all the time.
We're not
talking about nationalizing industries. We're talking about regulating free market properly.
Which industries do you feel at this point we've nationalized?
Education.
Okay. How's education doing?
Education compared to 1850, the poorest among us is having a great education. Why is that not fair? Wait. Why is that not
comparison?
Why is that? No.
Yeah, that is a shit comparison.
Even the poorest among us have to go to a. But you don't ever
how
stop.
about I make a point
you don't
here?
ever really quickly.
For the
you don't ever
amount we spend per student, and we are so far behind. Come on.
But hang on, you never stop and you're thankful for the fact that every single one of us in this country, no matter what level of socioeconomic status you are, can go and get a public education. That's a beautiful thing. I feel like you just gloss right over that and you just go straight to like, it's not as great as it should be. Okay, fine.
So I'm interested, Caleb. I'm interested,
Don't
Caleb.
Criticize me for that. Get out of here.
I'm not criticizing you. I'm just we've built a beautiful society.
I understand that, but
if we were to make all public education private, then are you implying that the private sector would do a better job at education, even providing the same amount of education to people who couldn't properly afford it?
No.
So you're saying. So what are you implying then? Because you tried to get a gotcha when you said education is nationalized, but as opposed to what? Being a private system?
I don't have an answer for that. What I'm merely saying is that
in the context of your gotcha, you're implying that private might do a better job, right?
No, in the context of the gotcha, it's nationalizing an industry is not a good idea.
As opposed to what, though? In context of what? Not a good idea. How? Compared to what? That's the context I was working off of.
And all I'm saying is that
how can you say that it doesn't work well if you don't have any other comparison? Is what I'm saying.
And
well, the comparison would be
other countries. That's not a public. But that's not fair, though. Culturally speaking, we're talking about way different.
Okay, so
apples and oranges all day.
Well, let me tell you about apples and oranges. Comparing it to the 1850s is the most ridiculous way to compare something.
But why?
Because
why can we not?
I'm not talking about the 1850s.
Well, I'm merely pointing out Cyril's ridiculous statement there.
No. If we didn't build the society we have, then it could still be very well we would not very well be far removed from times like the 1850s is my point. Like, of course we can sit here and admit that we're so blessed and what we've built in the past 100 years as far as humanity is incredible. Like, look at the population chart. It just spikes after 1900.
Could I just say,
all because of things that we've built that, go ahead, Chad. But, like, it's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. If we're allowed to compare to other countries, though, Caleb, South Korea's nationalized their internet infrastructure and is doing years better than us. So
it's doing quite well.
Am I allowed to submit that to the court, sir?
You certainly are.
Exhibit B.
Yeah. No, you certainly are. But as far as this country, what else have we kind of nationalized? The military-industrial complex? Is that a fair one?
No. Nationalized? How? That's in the hands of... All we do is hand out contracts to private companies.
Which is essentially nationalizing, right?
No, you're handing out... Essentially what it does is it takes the choice away from a free market, which is
essentially nationalizing, right? Because as a nation, we are choosing you to build said product and not competing with anyone else.
Yeah, but nationalize kind of implies the people actively have a say in it, whereas in the military-industrial complex, we don't. Right? What are we even talking about anymore? I'm so far detached from where we were.
So
I think my point was...
Sure, go ahead. Okay, I'll go.
Fuck off.
Well, the thing that I always kind of push back on you, Caleb, is when it's almost like because there might be a slippery slope about communism, then we can't do anything that might be better if we nationalized it. Like, that's crazy. Like, there's definitely common sense solutions that might be democratic socialism in forms that we already have, and maybe we need to do a little bit more to invest in workers and invest in health.
Where is it
doesn't have to turn to communism
to improve their own situation?
Okay, go ahead. I didn't hear you.
No. The idea is everybody has a right to a certain standard of living. Whatever else you want to do inside of that context is your own.
Correct.
People definitely should be, especially I think, at least meeting a certain, at least a minimum standard of living.
Especially when we live in a modern, wealthy, extremely still wealthy society. The idea that we live in this such... Go ahead.
I just want to know if you agree with that. Do you think everybody should be guaranteed at least a minimum standard of living?
I mean, yeah, I do think that. I think the issue here, though, is how do you achieve that? That's more my issue than whether or not you should have it.
Sure.
Right? And I see, personally, so many people that just actively find ways to not participate like everyone else does.
Sure, you have that. Hey, welcome to America. You have the freedom to be a shitbag. All I'm saying is I think people should have a right to at least a minimum standard of living.
But my point here is that if you are a shitbag, what gives you any right?
Yeah, but what level in this country? You're a free person.
Also, what level of...
You're free to be a shitbag and not be entitled to anything, right?
We definitely have to define shitbag. What if... I'm sure Caleb might define
able-bodied person who's actively not employed in the workforce or looking.
Okay. All right. Well,
okay,
I just don't. How many of those are there? A few million?
There's probably
maybe?
a decent amount, but
there's definitely a decent amount. I'm not minimalizing it. It's not like half the country. Like, come on.
Yeah, but the government isn't subsidizing these people.
And also, this is why, like,
I'm not saying they are. I'm saying just from a moral, like,
this is why I like
idle perspective, they're shitbags.
Sure, well, but again, you live in a free country.
People like that.
You live in a free country, Caleb. The whole beauty of freedom is that everybody gets to fuck it up on their own.
I get that, but just because you're fucking it up on your own does not mean you would be entitled to such things like that.
At least a certain minimum standard of living is what I'm saying.
I think that's.
I'm not disagreeing with you there. I think maybe that minimum standard of living should be up until you're 21. Then you're on your fucking own.
No, see, but then you lose me again because I don't know if I agree with that.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. So we have to decide whether. I don't know.
I'm giving you the middle of the ground here. What if we did an age limit?
I think
right. I'm all for protecting children. That's extremely important to anyone. I think.
Yeah, nobody would say otherwise. Geez.
But why not continue? Right? Why not kind of cut them off at a certain point? It's okay. Like, now you're grown up. You know, you've been through high school. You had the chance to go to college. You learned a trade. I agree. 21.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. You do that in many aspects of life after 21, but I still think that they should have health care. I still think that person should be able to eat, not extravagantly, but like eat. I still think that person should have shelter.
Yeah, but a lot of people would argue like it's not hard to feed yourself. You know, rice and beans go a long way. Is it a shitty way to live? Absolutely, but
you have to admit that you have to admit that there are going to be some of us who don't even know how to feed ourselves. Maybe because not know how to feed ourselves, but like don't get fed. Maybe some of them are shitbags, but a lot of them have like mental deficiencies, and like a lot of them have like serious disorders. So like we need to put these people in a mental institution. What does that mean? Who's going to pay for it?
Well, I'm not talking about people that don't work at all. What I'm talking about is people who are parents who are making $10, $7.25 an hour. Can you imagine trying to be a parent and
that's what I'm saying,
$5 an hour?
Right.
Like, again, you might want to say, well, don't have kids, but
come on,
you know, that's leave those people in the dust because of that. Like, you have to at least meet a standard.
And I
nobody's shitting on gold toilets here. We're talking about.
I'm not saying they are. Well, now you're just taking what I'm saying out of context.
I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. Okay. I was just using that.
Don't defend Cyril what you don't know.
And look, this is why I really like the idea that I came up with. You're welcome to push back right on it again, right after I say it. But like, look, a system that rewards people for working. So like, if you work an hour, thank you for participating. Now you get a bump up to the poverty line. Even if you took a job at Walmart for $7.25 an hour, we're rewarding you for being a part of nobody's getting a handout without working. Like we need to reward. If we want to encourage people to enter the workforce, then make sure they're making the amount of money that will motivate them to do so. $7.25 an hour is not going to get it done. Like, you know, I feel like there's a lot of people who end up taking more welfare. Dude, I think most people have pride, and most people are not takers, and most people are ashamed of going on welfare in any form. I think that's most people. Some people are always going to
I'd probably take advantage. That, yeah.
Yeah, some people are always going to take advantage, but it's a small minority, not a big deal. Like, we do such a good for the majority when we give them these opportunities that like it just outweighs the negative. Some people will abuse, fine, but like coming up with a system where we can target motivating them getting back in the workforce, because now they're like, well, even though this was going to be a $7.25 an hour job, the poverty line here in Missouri is actually, for me with 2 kids, regardless of why that happened, is like you should be making like 16, right? To make enough to put food on the table and have shelter. Then the government steps in and supplements the income up to 16 each hour and rewards this lady for working. Come on.
What I struggle with is at what cost though? Like,
right.
Taking money from billionaires who
I don't know that will work for so long.
But we've already tried this though. We got nowhere with this.
Here's my case to the American people. Walmart's profits go to the shareholders 100%. But how much value do those workers bring to making those profits for the company? Those workers should be sharing in the profit. And I know damn well they are not. And because they are a part of the product. So I could say the government or some entity should be coming in, whether it's a union or the government should be coming in and saying, we're going to take as much as we need to make sure that everybody that works here is at the poverty line. Now, look, if it gets tough and a company starts to go under, then it gets complicated and conversations need to be had. But like, I think it's a good starting point.
Sure,
like it's a good starting point.
That sound like.
All right, hang on. We tried this. We cannot agree where the money is going to come from. We've done this, you guys.
It's called the profits of the company that the workers also should be taking part in because they're a part of the product.
It's called New York votes to cap Uber and Lyft services.
When Caleb works his ass off for charter and brings tremendous service, he is pushing their value upwards. He sees that in his income, yes. And it sounds like. Well, and it sounds like you've moved up enough that like you are at an income level that like you are blessed and you have worked for that. Don't get me wrong. But you know, these people bring value to these companies and sometimes they get paid shit and it's not right.
So New York has become the first major U.S. city to approve a cap on ride-hail card licenses and set minimum pay conditions for drivers. Essentially... And as far as this article,
go ahead and share that screen.
How does one do that?
It's on the left. It's the green square on the left with an arrow that points right.
Shit. There we go.
So you're gonna want to actually pull the article up. Oh, that's
that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, how's that? So there's 13,500 cabs, yellow cabs in New York City, and there's 80,000 Ubers since Uber started in the city 4 years ago. That is insane. And essentially the idea is New York is trying to cap the amount of licenses being given out to Uber drivers who can operate within the city because wages are just drastically dropping for everybody trying to drive a vehicle in New York City. And also a big complaint is, and I don't know if you can see in this picture, but it says 80,000 cars, 42% empty at all times, cap now. And apparently this has been a big problem with the ride-hailing apps is there are so many people trying to be drivers that it actually adds to the pollution and the traffic conditions, and because you have a bunch of these people driving around with empty cars waiting for riders, right? So
if you want an
adds
Uber,
to the congestion of the city. Like
if you want a hyper competitive market, though, then that's going to happen.
Right, but it's like driving just people who are trying to use the roads out of the streets now because there's just, I mean, its congestion is so horrible.
Sure.
I mean, if you think about it, you have a bunch of these tens of thousands of these empty cars just driving around, just waiting. So I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I am totally on board.
So a lot of people that I know that drive for Uber right now, they do it on their way to work.
What?
So like I'll wake up in the morning.
They happen to get somebody out that way?
Yep. I'll turn on my thing and be like, all right, is there somebody in Greece that's heading to Henrietta? If there is, I'll go grab them, drop them off, and then I'll be at work.
Yeah, see, this isn't really an issue in Rochester, though. This is an issue
I get that,
big metropolitan areas.
I only see one, New York.
Well, no, New York voted to cap it, but I can tell you for sure that Uber has been wreaking havoc on congestion in big cities for a while now.
And by the way, who pays for the upkeep of those roads and that infrastructure? Taxpayers. So, you know, taxpayers can have some say over, like, if they're, you know, crushing the city's streets with gobs of vehicles. Because it probably has negative effects, you know?
Well, I would imagine so. 42% empty at all times, 80,000 cars.
Yeah, but, you know, I wonder, cab drivers have, you know, obviously there's a direct correlation between lower wages right now for the cab drivers and Uber, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, sure.
But if you turn Uber off, are all of those people going to go and get cabs? I don't think they will.
No, and this is where this gets hard because and this actually this article specifically says that because let's see. Lyft said the move would bring New Yorkers back to an era of struggling to get a ride, particularly for communities of color and in the outer boroughs.
Right.
So I don't think they're saying that Uber doesn't provide a service. They're just saying that Uber, unregulated as it is right now, or too many licenses being given out right now, is just drowning the city.
And New York has had
like 13,500 cabs. Is that it? Is that how many there were before Uber came along? That's insane. Like, was the market that short that 80,000 people could pour in like that?
Well, I don't think it's that the market was that short. I think it's more of a matter of convenience, right? If I have to wait an hour for my brother to take me to the Yankees game, because I'm not paying for a cab that's going to cost me $180.
Right, okay.
Whereas an Uber driver will do it for $60. Well, now I'm going to take the Uber driver because of the matter of convenience and the affordability of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of where.
But at what cost, though? And I guess that's what this is asking. Because, I mean, are these Uber drivers selling themselves way short?
Well, again, it's right. What Cyril said. It's hyper competition, and when you're hyper competitive, wages go down, right?
Yeah, but to the point where the city has to step in. And there was this small little piece down here, and it references the TLC, but I don't know. Oh, the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission. Yeah. Okay. So the study commissioned for the TLC, by who? I don't know by who. Recommended a minimum hourly wage for drivers of $17.22 per hour and found that 85% of app-based drivers currently net below that amount. Now, $17.22 an hour sounds like a lot, but this is New York City.
Right, and my question would be, because I'm always skeptical of stats, is how much less? Right?
Oh,
if they're getting paid $8 an hour, definitely a problem. If they're getting paid $16, I don't know that I would, freak out just yet.
Yeah, you always got to take stats with a grain of salt.
And quite frankly, when you talk about an Uber, right, the people don't factor in other things like the fact that, your vehicle is being used. So therefore, you're going to have more maintenance, more wear and tear, more likely to have to purchase a new vehicle or another vehicle as you're using your Uber because you're driving it that much more. So there's a lot of factors that get put into this.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because I remember reading an article not too long ago, and I wish I could reference it now because I don't even know where it would be. But the idea is the article said that the money that Uber drivers make essentially evens out to be just people borrowing the value on their car because they don't make they make enough, right, but to the point where you're kind of just borrowing on maintenance you're going to have to pay for later. That's how little money they make on average, which I thought was a very interesting concept.
I think the other thing that I find interesting is as time goes on, I think that the low standards with Uber will kind of have an effect on Uber as time goes on.
Oh, it absolutely will.
If I get an Uber and I expect, a person to come pick me up and drive me, and then when I get in the car, there's 3 people in the fucking car, I'm going to feel uncomfortable as shit. Because it's, him and his 2 buddies, and who knows, maybe they'll fucking rob me. I don't know what they're doing.
I don't think Uber allows that, actually.
Yeah, but it only takes one, right? I mean, that was happening a little bit.
Yeah, there were some horror stories coming out about Ubers, but for the most part, Ubers are pretty. I think interesting. This is very strange to me because you would think that if this many people weren't making great money driving for Uber, then naturally they would just stop driving for Uber.
So here's the other thing I wanted to jump in right here.
Strange. You would think that mm-hmm. naturally people's attitudes would just curb the market, but it's not done that. Now New York City feels the need to step in.
Well, here's why. I want to throw in right here real quick. And that is the one that I said earlier, right? The convenience of me picking somebody up because I'm happen to go to a Red Wings game anyway. I might as well pick somebody up. Right? That I'm not looking for a career by picking somebody up to go to the Red Wings game. I'm just looking for gas money. Number one, I think that a lot of people do that. And number two,
right,
what I've seen a lot of is older folks doing it because they already have a retirement check.
Right.
And they're just looking for some companionship, and they will talk your fucking ear off as soon as you get in the Uber. I think that has a bigger impact than a lot of people think it does. Those 80,000 people, I'll bet you 5,000 of them are old people that just have nothing else to do, or people that are on some sort of a disability or some sort of
dude. I remember
you name it.
I remember reading an article in I think it was Time, but essentially the idea was all of these summer jobs, these temporary positions, have a huge demand because younger kids just aren't working as much these days. They find they can support themselves through their parents or whatever. Right. So the demand has gotten to the point where post-retirement people are filling these jobs.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, I actually work with 3 or 4 people that are only working the job they're working because it's part-time work, seasonal, and they're post-retirement. Why the fuck not? You know, it's... Right. So I get what you're saying there. But unfortunately, that means that the people who need to make a living from Uber sort of shorted because they don't have a retirement check subsidizing
and by
them.
direct extension, the cab drivers.
Yeah, that's true.
Because me as an Uber driver, I already get a retirement check. Like my house is paid for, or my apartment's good.
My car's paid for.
I work I live in a nursing home. I might be dead next week. Like who the fuck knows? I don't care. I'll drive you for $2. I don't give a fuck.
I'll drive you for free if you just have a meal with me. I'll buy the lunch.
Right. So. When you factor in things like that, now you realize, like, oh shit, like that might be where the bulk of that change is coming from. Is the fact that now, and this is something that people don't talk about, you've reintroduced people into the job market that weren't there before.
People who are just literally bored.
Yeah. Well, they weren't working. And they're not even counted in unemployment because they're retired. Yeah.
They're retired, yeah.
They don't count towards the workforce.
The fucking baby boomers are taking more from us, the bastards.
Well, the last article I saw is if millennials would stop eating avocado toast, maybe they would be able to move out of their parents' house.
Oh, I remember that one. God damn.
To me, what's interesting and what is different about the Walmart greeter, the Uber driver, and the part-time ice cream scoopologist is that those jobs are slowly being taken by people who just are bored as fuck and I got nothing else to do. And what's interesting to me is it's those same people who are going to drain Social Security who have already taken the part-time job that you can't get now to even pay Social Security to keep that shit going. Cyril, you there?
Because it has to be called out. When Caleb says they drain Social Security,
Go ahead.
He ignores the fact that they pay into it their whole lives. Their whole
Sorry about that.
Oh, certainly. But my point is that, yes, they have paid into it. Absolutely. And I'm paying into it. But my perspective and my understanding is that it might be non-existent by the time I can draw from it. Therefore, to me, it looks like a drain.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before. Cyril's not convinced. Actually, this was a podcast because Cyril's not convinced that Social Security will be bankrupt. But
so how could anybody when it's not bankrupt?
It's not bankrupt.
Right. And we can also agree that, though, people have been warning about how it would have been before now many, many times. Okay, so...
There's always
we'll see.
There's also people out there warning about how the housing bubble is going to collapse. And people laughed at them, too.
I think where we left there...
Financial wizardry is occurring.
Yeah, I think where we left it there was where I was perfectly fine where we left it was agree to disagree, and we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, no, that's fair. My point here is that there's got to be some sort of financial wizardry that's going on. But anyway, I was saying that joke tongue-in-cheek.
So what do we think? Are we, just to
sort of
finish this one off, are we...
That's enough.
Wait,
episode 48.
All right, well, I was just